Hey, I'm Dave, and you're listening to another episode of Dying to Listen podcast presented by the Disc Golf Dyers Guild. So, today we have Brendan from Spike Hyzer Dyes. I don't know why I like to say it like that, but it's a cool name. Brendan, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll jump right in, and I'm going to ask the question that I always ask everybody. Do you play disc golf?
I think I might have played once or twice.
Fantastic. Again, I don't know why I asked that question because I'm assuming all dyers play disc golf. If you're a dyer and don't play disc golf, let me know because I want to know why. What got you into disc golf?
So after I left for college, when I would come back in the summertime, my first youngest brother and I would come up with some kind of activity to do, and it would basically become our obsession for the 10 weeks that I was home. So I think after my third year, we had exhausted bowling and shooting pool, and we were walking through Dick's, and I think we happened to peruse through the disc section, and we're like, oh, we could do this. We both played high school golf, so we were familiar with the objective of the game, and it couldn't be as frustrating as real golf, right? So we did what everybody does to start and picked our favorite looking disc, the one with the coolest name. So I grabbed a Wraith off the shelf, and you know exactly how that went.
That's a great name, not the best first disc.
No, I could think of one or 700 better ones.
What year did you start playing disc golf?
Well, technically, I think that was somewhere in the 2014 to 2015 area. But we really, because we didn't want to show up to a course and look like fools. We would go to the local elementary school and basically make our own object courses for a while. And that got us through that summer. But I would say, if people ask me when I started playing, I'd say probably 3 years ago was when I actually picked it up and had the intent to try to get better.
What made you pick it up again and try to get better?
So the town that I live in now is not the town that I'm initially from. And the first couple guys that I made friends with were pretty avid at playing. And eventually they dragged me out to league one day. And I was like, oh, I could do this. I could come out once a week and, throw some Frisbees. It was a nice change of pace to like a regular workout. It was different. It was a way to get out of the house and get some fresh air and just kind of caught fire.
That's awesome. Do you still have your first disc?
My first disc, that Wraith? No, I threw that Wraith on top of the roof of the local high school. I had that disc for about 3 weeks.
Well, probably for the best, I think. What did you get after that? Do you remember?
It was a Champion Daedalus.
Okay.
Because I couldn't throw the Wraith, so I did a little Googling trying to understand what the flight numbers were. Little did I know they're imaginary.
Facts.
So I saw that third number was turn, which means that makes the disc go farther. So the Daedalus had a -3 turn on it. So I was like, oh, this one's better. It was not much better.
A for effort at least. But that's how you learn, is you make mistakes. So what got you into disc dyeing then?
I'd like to say I started a couple weeks before the rest of the COVID boom, but I may be wrong. I think you can kind of group me in there with everybody else. I've got, I guess, kind of an artistic background. Occupationally, I'm an architect. So I've got kind of design in my everyday life. And my current obsession at the time was disc golf. So how could I bring and kind of bridge the two and bring art to disc golf? And I was scrolling through Instagram, I think, and I had seen a disc dye. I wasn't following any disc dyers at the time because I didn't know it existed. And I guess it just happened to come up in the discovery portion. You may like, I guess I was following enough of the Innova pros. And I saw a guy do some cool stuff. And I reached out to him and had him dye a couple discs for me. And they came in, and I was like, I can do this. And that's kind of how it started.
Do you remember who that guy was?
Yes. His name is Chris, and I believe his Instagram is Glow Butter Disc Dyes. Okay. Glow Butter Discs.
So I was stalking your Instagram. The earliest post that I could find was 2021.
Yeah, the Instagram did not happen until afterwards.
Gotcha.
I think I had seen all the disc golf stuff from my personal Instagram. And then I tried to at least get okay enough that what I put up there wasn't too incriminating.
I was trying to find like your incriminating stuff. Damn it.
Yeah, that's a very special folder on my computer.
Do you remember the first disc that you dyed?
Yes. It was the PDGA player disc. When you sign up to get your PDGA number. That year it was a Gold Line Explorer with the tree on it. And that was the first one. So kind of interesting that the first disc I was given was the first disc that I dyed.
Do you remember what you did for a dye on that disc?
It was an attempt at a shaving cream bed. Yeah, I bought some dye poly and bought some shaving cream, and very quickly learned that with shaving cream and dye poly, less is more.
Yes. No, I know that feeling. It's like, I don't see a lot of dye in here. I'm just going to dump it all on.
Exactly. So basically what I ended up with was almost a purple hot dip. There were some purples and blues and turquoise, and it just basically turned out purple.
Well, better than nothing. Did you do a shaving cream mound, or did you do a flat shaving cream bed?
It was a flat bed. I did the first couple that I did were flat, and then I tried the mounds and realized I liked the mounds a whole lot better.
Do you remember the second, third, and fourth discs that you dyed?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do.
Well, okay, what were they?
So the fact that the first one was so purple, I tried to tone it down and switched and bought some red. I was like, oh, red will be good. Well, red is an animal. Let's just dye red specifically is a beast. So the next two that I did were some. They were a pair of Star Mako 3s that I had bought because at this point I knew what the kind of discs were you're supposed to throw. So I had a pair of those, and I dyed them up. And they weren't great. They probably weren't good. They were serviceable, and they were what they were. We'll just leave it at that. And I happened to have them out on the course one day, and I wasn't throwing them well, so obviously it was the disc's fault. And one of the guys that was in the parking lot getting ready to play as I was packing up saw them kind of in the trunk of the car, and he was like, well, I'll buy those off you. Those are cool. And that's where the itch started. I was like, oh, people will buy this?
That is awesome that you had that experience. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like with the round I just had, I was going to throw this in the lake.
I mean, were you happy with those dyes at the time?
At the time, I was. If I look back on them, maybe not so much. But as you probably know, there wasn't quite as many resources available at that time as there are now.
Yeah.
I see some of the first beds that people are pulling out now, and it took me quite a few months to get there.
Yeah, it was definitely hard to find information just even a few years ago. In the beginning, where did you find your information?
So I found a little bit here and there. I think the first place I ever saw a comment about it was Disc Golf Course Review. And then I think I stumbled upon the disc dyeing subreddit. Just enough to know what materials I needed. And I think that's what hooked me, was more so the science part of understanding the process over the art aspect of the result.
Interesting.
So there were some beds that I had more fun making. I had more fun learning how to make the bed, learning the ratios, learning different things like that than caring what the disc looked like when it got pulled.
That's awesome, actually.
Maybe a little opposite of most people.
That's perfectly fine. How long did you do those shaving cream beds, and what was the next dye method that you did?
Okay, so I think I spent about 2 months doing shaving cream beds. It might have been a dozen discs, maybe 20. And then I moved on to lotion because I heard somebody mention lotion. And I was like, oh, it's going to be the same thing. It's just not shaving cream. So I tried to apply, all of the same ideas I had for shaving cream to lotion. And for lotion, less is not more. So we took one step forward and a couple steps back there.
Nice.
And I had some pretty awful results. And just in general, kind of had an awful time with the lotion. That lasted for about 3 discs. Basically, once I got finished with the first bottle of the cocoa butter, I was like, I don't think lotion's for me.
And what did you do after lotion?
From lotion, we went to white glue. Because I heard that glue was a fun one to use. So I was kind of following the paper trail, coming down the rabbit hole. And I went to the store and I was like, oh, the white glue is half the price. It's going to work. And it worked for a little while. I was doing white glue beds for a couple months. To the point where I was selling a couple of white glue beds. I hadn't really sold any of the other stuff up to now. White glue was when I started to get confident enough to, hey, maybe somebody will want this one.
Nice. I've never done a white glue bed. Is it similar to like lotion in a way?
In a way, I would say it's probably closer to clear glue in the way the medium behaves for the most part. But, you lose a lot of definition. So if you want more of like an ethereal kind of spacey pastel look, you can get that with white glue. I don't know. I would assume it has to do with the density of the glue itself, and how the dye mixture stays relative to the surface. I think the clear glue kind of demands that dye to stay on the surface, whereas the white glue was let it kind of slip down below and you weren't getting a lot of that saturation.
So after your white glue, what was your next method?
From then it was clear glue. I was like, well, the glue's not working quite like I want, but I don't know. At this point, I figured it was just me. I had run through all the methods that I knew were possible, and I was at Walmart, and they had the half gallon of the clear glue. So I was like, well, okay, so that one's I'm clearly good at getting less, but it's less enough that I'll try it once or twice. And I made that first clear glue bed. And I was like, this is the stuff. This is me.
What other methods have you tried?
I have tried just about everything. I don't think there's anything I haven't tried. No, I don't think so. Other than maybe like true hand painting. I'm not artistic in the sense of being able to like freehand paint like some of these guys do. Those are crazy. I love watching the videos of those or seeing the results of those, because that's just something I don't think I have in me.
Yeah, it's definitely takes some artistic ability and above my skill and pay grade. So
yeah, you and me both.
So you've tried all these methods. What is your favorite one to do?
Okay, so I would say my favorite style is probably spin dyes. I find spin dyes to be cathartic. And I think, with the exception of the hand painting that I just mentioned, I think spin dies take some of the most technical skill to execute well.
What got you into spin dyeing?
I think it started when I would pull a glue bed and there was a part of the rim that was just white. It was blank. It was kind of a mistake. I was like, how can I fix that? So I was doing some Googling, and I don't remember who it was I saw that was kind of spinning the edge. So I was like, okay, that's a good way to kind of frame the picture, frame your piece of artwork. So it started with that. And then I would have to say I came across Andy Dyes. And he's out of Europe. I can never remember which country in Europe. But I saw his work, and it was just, to this day, it's probably one of my favorite things to look at are the spin dyes he comes up with. And I just loved how you could slightly play with kind of the proportions of one color to another color to the white space, in the stamp.
What mixtures do you use for your spin dyes?
So most of what I use is a mixture of acetone and the powdered dye. I do have, in some of my most used colors, or the colors that I like to blend the most, I do have a denatured alcohol and powdered dye mix.
What are your favorite / most used colors?
That's a good question. Caribbean blue is a big one from ProChem. It's a big one. It requires a lot of patience with the spin dyeing, lots and lots of layers. I've actually started to gravitate towards Sonic Blue instead because I don't have that patience most nights, and I can get a kind of similar color with less on the applicator. So that one's a good one. I love blood red. That's probably one of my favorite reds. That one and cherry are pretty awesome. I've used a ton of pansy. That purple, that's a good one. And of course, a staple's got to be neon lemon zest.
What do you use to apply the dye to the disc?
I am a big Q-tip guy for the most part. So I have got, your regular Q-tips that you use for the eargasms when you get out of the shower. And then I've got some kind of nail applicator Q-tips that they have like a cone shape to them and come to a point. So you can get a little more of a fine line out of them. Q-tip makes some originally that I found, at the store, and I was like, oh, these will be perfect. And sometimes they were good, sometimes they weren't. But then I found some on Amazon that have a real nice fine point to them. And what's nice about them is you can use them, and you can use them probably for a couple days until they really start to dry out and get crusty. And then you just toss it, and I don't feel bad. As opposed to if I forget to clean out this brush, and the acetone degrades the bristles, and then I gotta buy a new one.
Yeah. How much dye at a time do you put on the Q-tip? Is it a lot, or do you try to squeegee it out as much as you can?
For the most part, I try to go with less. I try to find that sweet spot of enough dye that you're going to get coverage, but not too much that it's going to, as soon as that Q-tip hits the surface of the disc, that dye's going to spread. I think that's kind of what I like about the Q-tips over brushes, is that the brush really doesn't absorb the dye. It more so sits in between the bristles, so it doesn't really have anywhere to go. If you have the Q-tip saturated but not, dripping, and you hit that disc and you hit it light enough that some of that dye will soak into the Q-tip instead of onto the disc.
What kind of record player do you have for your spin dyes?
An old beat up one that needs to be replaced. Yeah, I think this is technically the third one I've had. And I don't really know why I replaced them. So the first one was given to me by someone local who had a couple that he was getting rid of, and he's like, "Hey, could you use this?" And I was like, I actually could, and that would be great.
Nice.
And then the second one, I think I bought it because it was half the size of the first one, so it saved me room. And then the third one, I think I thought I was buying a direct drive. I was moving from belt driven to direct driven, and I thought I found one for a steel, and I misread the description, so I just bought another one for no reason.
Yeah.
If I bought it, I've got to use it.
You could do like 2 spin dies at once.
That would be impressive. I would pay to watch somebody do 2 at a time.
Well, I might have to do that. What do you use, if anything, to prop up the disc on the record player?
Currently, nothing. When I'm doing the top of the discs, currently nothing. From what I guess just by happenstance, all the record players I've had, that little nipple in the middle has not been tall enough to get in the way. Other than 1 or 2 discs, I think, and I just decided to do something else with those. But when I flip them over and I want to, put spins on the back, I use a roll of like painter's tape, and that is an awful experience if you've ever tried this.
Yeah. So shameless plug, Dave's spin die jig rig. I can send one to you for free if you would like.
Oh, absolutely.
Great. Done.
Sweet.
Awesome.
That saved me a lot of headache, or allegedly. We'll see when
yes. Well, that was the purpose of that, and curious to see what you think of that.
Yeah, let me let you know.
For the spin dies, besides doing like eccentric rings, what other stuff do you do with the spin dies? Do you do like lollipops? Do you mask anything off?
So I do a fair amount of lollipops. I found that I end up doing the lollipops at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. The more complicated the spin die is, that requires, more focus and more concentration, happens later and later at night. I don't know why, and I don't know why I keep doing it to myself, but that's kind of where we're at. I don't mask off a ton. What I will do is if I'm doing a lollipop die, I guess this is kind of a little secret of mine, where Bobby on T Diddy will make the vinyl where he doesn't want the die to go. I will center the disc and basically glue mask a circle where I don't want anything to go, so that I don't have to worry about putting down on the exact spot every time. I can be a little high, and the glue is going to catch that die.
What are, like, for the lollipop spins, how do you get it on the same line every time when you're doing the layers?
I think the big thing is I don't try to get the one single line like our buddy Justin over at JL Dyes. When he does the ones where it's maybe one brush wide, that amazes me. I don't think I've tried. But I think it comes down to timing. Just getting yourself in a good spot and then finding that good rhythm, and not being afraid to stop if you think you're not going to hit that point. Having that control, I guess. Because some I've seen some people try to go on every spin. They try to drop it down again. Personally, I like to go kind of every other spin.
That obviously makes sense, because I feel like every time it comes around, I was like, ooh, I got to hit it. Ooh, I got to hit it. Ooh, I got to hit it.
Yeah.
Do you have any additional tips or tricks that you give people for spin dyeing in general?
Patience is big. Like we mentioned, don't have too much dye on the disc, because you don't want to take as much time. I'd rather take twice as much time than have a disc be ruined.
How long does it typically take you to do a spin dye?
It kind of depends on the complexity of it. If I know the colors I want to use, roughly how I want to lay them out, it could be as quick as 10 minutes for what you call a simple spin die, just concentric circles. If I'm fading a lot of colors into each other, that takes a little longer. Lollipops obviously take longer. There's some that I've done where it's the reversed spins, where there's maybe 3 lollipop rings concentric inside each other. And the first one and the second one spin in the opposite direction, and the third one spins the same direction as the first. Those take quite a while because I get a little dizzy staring over the record player with the acetone fumes. I have to stand up and do a lap and then come back. And then like what does Bobby call them? The tunnelers and the wobblers, those ones with the offset circles, those can take a while.
I feel like spin dyeing finishes off any other dye that you've done and or is just good on their own, and it can be either super simple if you do like some simple rings on the edge, or it can be super complex like lollipops. So there's so much you can do with spin dyeing. You can mask it off with the glue to do some cool patterns on there. Yeah, that's awesome. Besides the spin dyeing, what would your second favorite dye method be?
Okay. So the spin dyes are definitely my favorite, but I don't do them the most. My second favorite would be the clear glue beds, which are what I do the most. So it's a little flip-flop there. Because unfortunately, spin dyes don't sell, unless you're Justin.
Yeah. Why do you like doing the glue beds?
So what I like about the glue, as opposed to the other kind of lay the bed down mediums that I've tried, I feel like you have the most power over how you manipulate the dye once it's on.
So once
you can blow it around and you can toothpick it, and then to me, I just have more control.
How do you like to manipulate the beds in general for you?
So it started off very toothpick heavy. I was a big toothpick guy. And then I was watching a YouTube video. It might have been Nowski Dyes, and he had the flexible tube. And I was like, oh, you can blow into him. He must have an air compressor or something. And I commented, and he said, no, it's just a tube. Just old-fashioned lung power. So I got a straw, and we started blowing with the straw. And then after, I probably hung on to the straw for about 6 months. And then was like, now I know why he's using the tube. My neck was a little sore. So that was a fantastic upgrade. And so I'm still stuck with the same 1 foot piece of PVC, not PVC, but the clear plastic tubing, the airline tubing that I had from the beginning. I've gotten to the point where I had to tape off one of the sides because there's been times where I've not paid attention, and maybe I had gotten too close to the glue on the previous bed, and I put it down and picked it up, and glue does not taste good.
Yeah. I guess I never thought about that before, but yeah. Got to be careful what end you blow on.
Yeah, it's not very tasty.
I think they purposely make it not tasteful for kids to not eat the glue.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You would think as an adult I would know not to stick the glue in my mouth, but apparently I'm a slow learner.
Hey, it happens, and that's how you learn. You make mistakes. You eat glue.
Yeah.
For your glue beds, do you use heat?
For the glue beds, I do not. I don't. Every once in a while, if I'm trying to put a lot of pink on a disc, specifically the neon cerise, I will put that disc under heat for about a half hour, but then I'll let it have its total sit time without the heat, as if I didn't use the heat. But
how long do you let the disc set for?
So the way my schedule usually works is I'll have a night of the week that I'm dying, and then usually I can pull the next day. So my star-esque plastics are all on like a 24-hour timer. And then the harder premium plastics, usually I go for 48. Because it's just easy. You know, I don't have a ton of discs that I'm trying to pump out, so you know, just it works with the schedule. You know, I come in on Monday, do some dyes. Tuesday I can pull them, rinse out the Ultra Stars, and put in some new ones.
So why do you let them sit for that long? In my head, it's for so long. Why do you let them sit for?
So, like I said, a lot of it is driven by my schedule. Whereas I'm sure you could get away with 12 or 18 hours without heat. I know, without heat, Dave. Without heat to get kind of the same effect. But I've never had an issue at 24 hours. You know, I don't use anything, any of the definition.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you noticed any blurring or streaking with letting it sit that long?
No, I think Jory made a good point a couple episodes back. He said kind of once it's laid down, it's in, and it doesn't really change. So that's, you know, that I've noticed a very similar thing. The only streaking I've ever noticed is if you have like a really domey disc and you try to roll it in, and a lot of times black is really the color that gets you. It'll kind of streak out towards the side and almost look like a shaving cream burst. You know, if you're not being careful enough.
Gotcha. And speaking of discs, what is your favorite discs and or plastic to dye?
That's a good one. There's so many good plastics out there to dye. I would say if you're not thinking about the long term, just about how the plastic takes the dye, K1 has to be the top of the list. But if you add in the factors like how quickly they fade and how fucking hard it is to get that release agent off of them, I could think of a couple others that are starting to jump that. I just did the new Discmania S-Line plastic last week, and that was actually really nice. It came out really well. You know, obviously can't tell how well the dye is going to stay. You know, we'll revisit that in a year or so and see where that's at. But that one's nice. I do really enjoy like the Chameleon. And I think in Discmania it's meta. You know, anything that's got that color shift, you know, because it adds like another dimension, some more depth into the dye. And it's a harder premium plastic. You know, so those usually hold much longer and kind of keep the definition a little longer before it starts to fade and get fuzzy.
So if you had to pick, I know a favorite is hard to pick, but if you had to pick one plastic to dye for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, for the rest of my life. Now you're trying to get me.
Yes.
The retailer in me says Star Plastic because more people throw Innova. But I might lean towards ESP.
Interesting.
If I had to pick one for the rest, because it's a weird plastic. I've had people put some dyes on some plastics and show the disc, and beforehand I'm thinking there's no way that's going to stick. There's no way you're going to put that yellow on that disc and it's going to be yellow when you take it out. And I'll be damned, I was wrong. You know, so there's a little bit of magic baked into that ESP plastic.
Yeah, it's magical. Have you noticed any major fading with ESP plastic? Because I've dyed, I think, like 2 ESP plastic discs, and I did a hot dip on them. And like 6 months or a year later, the black was starting to get pretty faded.
So I haven't done many stencils something that's got a hot dip on ESP, so I can't speak to like a large mass of black. But I will say that what I've done as far as glue beds hasn't been below kind of the other plastics similar to it.
What is your favorite dye accessory?
Well, I feel like the default would have to be the record player. But I'm going to try to come up with a good kind of honorable mention that nobody's thinking of. I found these little, because most people use either the glass kind of droppers or they get the plastic pipettes, the standard kind of, I think they're 5 mil sizes. Well, I found some little itty bitty ones that are, the big one's this long, the little one's like this, and the bulb is only kind of this wide. And they come to like super, super fine points. And I've found that if you use those and you're careful enough, that you can kind of mitigate some of the spread that you get when the dye hits the bed, because there's a smaller drop. So those have come in pretty clutch.
That is fascinating. You might have to send me a link to those so I can check them out.
Yeah, definitely. If I can find it.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you like drop those damn near the bed. You don't like...
Pretty close, yeah.
Interesting. Back to the glue beds. Are there any specific colors that you've noticed that spread more than others when you put it on the bed?
Yes. So, come to think of it, I've noticed Caribbean likes to spread a little more, which is interesting also because it's one that you got to kind of lay on a little thick. A couple more layers, and then it spreads a little more and a little more. I had some issues for a little while with pink worm dip, and I had never had an issue with any worm dip spreading too far. Usually they all get to be about the same size. In worm dip, you get more of the issue with like that cakey texture that they get if you put too much. But I don't know if it was just the pink that I had, but it was just running for the hills.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever used worm dip on a glue bed yet.
I do for certain colors that I can't quite mix. Pro tip here is Spike. It makes a green called Junebug, and it is by far the best green I've ever seen. I love it.
Nice. And I haven't used Spike It, just only worm dip. Got to get some of that now too. You're costing me money. What inspires you for your creations?
So it could be, I follow a lot of art pages that aren't disc related, a lot of different fluid art type pages, artists. So sometimes I'll see that with cells. I don't do a ton of the Floetrol beds, but I'll see kind of the way the cells are structured, and more so, again, going back to the method of how they laid it down and kind of understanding the color, or how they wanted to get the color to turn out versus how they laid it down. And sometimes I'll kind of apply that to a glue bed, or it could be something super simple. Like I could see, I think I saw somebody had laid their sweatshirt in the grass one time, and just the kind of the way that the arms kind of fell and the body of the jacket was on the grass. I was like, oh, that'd be a cool design, a composition on a disc, and the green with the blue.
It's always good to draw inspiration from other art forms, because that can definitely inspire you to think of something you normally wouldn't have think of. Where do you want to take your disc dyeing journey going forward? Is there anything that you want to experiment with? Anything that you want to try or do differently?
Yes, to all of those, I guess. My goal is to be able to have some time to be the first person to come up with something. I don't know what it is yet, but I want to be the guy that comes up with something. But I want it to be an accident too. I don't want it to be intentional. So I don't really know how I'm going to marry those two and have some success. But the first guy that did the more structured cells, or there's the first person that did it X or Y. I don't necessarily want to get famous from it, but just to know that there wasn't something I was following to come up with what I came up with. I'm sure that's a whole mess that made a lot more sense in my brain.
No, I mean, it makes sense. And, disc dyeing is definitely exploded since COVID, and a lot of new different styles of techniques have come out. But, the different styles and techniques that are out there that haven't been discovered yet, I think are limitless. So you have a chance.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that comes to mind is it's not even a disc dye, but I saw Jay Kennedy dye up some skateboard wheels, and that was genius.
Yes.
So my brain went to what other plastics will accept, this fabric dye that we use that we like to call disc dye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'll be looking out for your name of like, hey, check out this new dye method by Spike Hyzer Dyes. I'm like, all right, sweet.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
Yes. Whatever it is, you did it. What fail stories do you have, or anything that kind of sticks out to you as a fail story?
So on more than one occasion, I've been doing a spin dye and sneezed. That's happened. So those end up either going in my bag or get donated to a junior, an up and coming junior that doesn't really care that it's got a hiccup on it. I dropped an entire container of black dye in my kitchen, because that's where I work from, is half of my kitchen.
Yeah. Do you rent?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, semi-good, but how did that turn out?
Not so great, because my kitchen cabinets are white.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so it looks like there is a Dalmatian in my kitchen all the time.
What kind of countertops do you have?
I've got like a black solid surface, so it's super helpful with the dyeing as long as the dye stays on the countertop. As long as it stays on there, I can basically clean up whatever I need to, and please don't ever bring a black light into my kitchen.
You know how you're saying, what dye can take to other stuff? Well, you came up with a new method of cabinet dyes.
Yeah, let me tell you. That was, I had some help from one of my cats on that one.
Oh, man. That's my worst fear is, because I do the hot dipping, spilling that hot dip, because...
I've spilled some hot dip too, but the hot dip, luckily for me, I was able to clean it up fast enough that it didn't take. But the container that I dropped was straight acetone and black. So by the time it left the container, it was already stuck to whatever surface.
Yeah. Because it's not like paint where you can try to get it off. The dye kind of, dyes whatever it's on.
100%.
So do you do commissions? And if so, what has been your most memorable commission that you've done so far?
So I do commissions, and I haven't gotten any weird shit like you've asked before. Like some people have definitely got some odd ones, but I've had multiple people ask me to make a disc for them to propose to their spouse. So that's cool. The fact that I get to be part of that moment. There's been a lot kind of centered around weddings that have been my memorable ones, I guess. I had a local guy here, ask me to make a whole bunch of discs for all his groomsmen. So that was his groomsmen gifts. There was somebody that was going to a wedding, and the couple were a disc golf couple. So I did one for each of them, and then I think I've done 3 or 4 different proposal discs.
Wow, that's crazy. One, that's disc golf is that popular and people love it that much to propose with. But it's cool to do that, like you said, you're basically part of their life.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool feeling that they picked you, that they picked disc golf, like you said at first, that disc golf was that important to them, and that they picked you as an artist specifically. It's kind of a pretty high honor for that.
Absolutely. Do you like to keep an inventory of discs, or do you kind of die on demand?
I do have an inventory for when I vend, and we happen to be in my home office / home gym / dye storage. And over there somewhere, those containers, those are what I have usually for stock to take with me to different tournaments, and to keep on my Etsy store, the different online, platforms I sell from.
So do you vend at a lot of events / tournaments?
Not a ton, only because I haven't had a lot of time. So really my vending radius is kind of a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive. So being in the middle of Georgia, it's a little tough to get to places. But I'm kind of aiming for about between 1 and 2 dozen this year to vend at.
What has been your experiencing vending so far?
It's interesting. So I started obviously with the guy that just showed up with the table. Nothing marked. I just had a beat up white table that folded out because it was quick enough for me to put everything back in the car, after lunch so we can go out and play. Because as much as I've tried, I can't be the guy that shows up just to vend. My thing is, if I'm going to go out of town, I want to go and I want to play and I want to vend. I want it all. I'm very greedy.
Yes.
But it's been fun. Getting to interact with people is cool. They come over and they see, like when disc dyeing, before it exploded, I had already been vending at some local tournaments and stuff. And people were like, wow, you can do this. It hadn't really made it as far into the general public yet. So it was kind of cool to be spreading it that way, a little more in person. People can pick up the discs and look and be like, oh, I saw something like this online, but I thought it was kind of filtered or, printed. So that's pretty cool. And you can have conversations with people about the techniques and the different discs. And I like talking to people about how discs fly. And then every once in a while, somebody comes up who knows me, and recognizes the logo. And that's always cool, getting the recognition. I played at a tournament down in Savannah earlier this year, and there was a guy on my card on the second round, and we finished up, and he comes over and he's like whispering to me. He says, "Hey, I didn't want to mess with you during the round, but you did this maiden for me a couple months ago." So it was cool that he recognized me without me even saying anything. So just kind of, the notoriety isn't what I like, but just the fact that people remember you.
That's awesome. When was the first event that you vended at?
So the very first one was a couple years ago, and it was, I say vended, but it was more, we hold a charity tournament here every year for a Special Olympics sailing program that we have at the local course, because the course is on a park that's got a lake. So every year we hold a charity tournament for the Special Olympics sailing program. And that was the first thing I've ended at, was that tournament. And it gets a pretty good showing for a charity event in a smaller town. So there were 100 people there. It didn't sell a whole lot, because people were there, they wanted to donate for the cause, which I completely understood. I was cool with that. But just the exposure was nice. again, talking to a lot of people. It was a lot of time. That was the first time a lot of the locals had kind of seen the work that I did, because I would tell people that I dyed discs, but I wasn't quite ready for them to see them yet.
If you would have to give any tips or advice for dyers vending at events, do you have anything for them?
Yeah. So presentation helps a lot. I've noticed a lot more people have talked to me since I've had like a tent set up, and having something that people can see to draw them in, whether it's a banner. I think Chris Daddy Mac mentioned having a branded 10x10. That's kind of out of my tax bracket, but something, a vinyl sign, and just have a nice setup, because that's, people are drawn in by what they see first. They're not going to come to the table if they don't think there's anything they're going to like there. So that's going to get them there. And then from there, just kind of be personable. Don't be a dick. It's kind of the way I like to see it. People are going to come over and they're going to be curious, and there's going to be people that are going to come over with, they don't really have an intent to buy anything. They're just killing some time between rounds, looking. And I mean, to me, I'm flattered if somebody wants to come to the table and look at what I've done. So I appreciate that. So I try to treat everybody with the same respect, whether I think they're going to buy, clean me out, or whether they're just here to say hi. So have a good presentation and be, just kind of be yourself, unless you're a dick, and then don't be yourself.
Yes. Again, like I mentioned before, good life advice. Don't be a dick. So I really do like your logo. How did you come up or settle on the name with Spike Hyzer Dyes, and how did you come up with that logo?
So it's kind of funny. I technically started telling you the story about where the name came from. When I started playing disc golf, all I had was that Wraith. So all I could throw was basically a Spike Hyzer. I didn't understand form and mechanics, and release and Anheuser and Hyzer and all that fun stuff. So everything I threw was like a banana. And I got good at throwing that banana. It got to the point where I could go out and I could out-throw people with a Spike Hyzer. Not doing it intentionally, knowing that it would upset them when I outdrove somebody that had much better form than me. It was just how I learned, and it was so ingrained in how I played that when I took up the disc dyeing, it just seemed only natural. That it kind of rolled over into the logo and into the name. And then I've got a buddy here that I kind of gave him an idea of what I wanted. The only thing that I really had was I wanted to have that visual of a Spike Hyzer. And I had drawn up a sketch originally, but like I said, I have no artistic talent as far as physically. So that drawing never even made it into the digital world, because I don't want there to be evidence of that on the internet. He kind of took that and ran with it, and then it turned into that kind of rainbow spill, with the disc coming down being the eye and the spike.
Yeah, no, again, it's a great logo, and I like your name better now that I know the meaning behind it. That's awesome.
Thanks. I thought it was clever.
Yes.
Glad to know that I'm not just tooting my own.
No, it's a good idea, surprisingly. No.
Hey, gotta have one every once in a while.
Yes. If you were to start disc dyeing now, is there anything that you would do differently knowing what you know now?
I think for the most part, I would keep it the same, because I think learning is important. I think there's a little too much, hot take here. I think there's a little too much people wanting instant gratification from the dyes now. I've dyed 3 discs and they don't look like they belong hung on a wall. Screw this. Sorry, some of us put in untold amounts of dollars and time to get to where we were, to then make a video for you to be able to do it. I'm not one of those video guys, because I'm usually a behind the camera kind of guy. But, so I think the practice and the learning and kind of a deeper understanding of why things happen the way they do was important. But also, fuck lotion beds. I would have skipped those completely. Had I known they were going to be as awful as they were, I would have skipped it and maybe revisited it later, like way down the road, to maybe not give myself such a bad first impression. Because as you can tell, I'm still a little jaded by that.
Yeah, I feel your sentiments exactly with me as well. I never had good success with lotion. Either lotion doesn't like me or I'm just bad at it, but it was never saturated and I always had a shit ton of air bubbles.
Yeah, I never really had the air bubbles as much. And I would get saturation okay. It got to... The first one didn't saturate at all. The first one, it looked like I dyed a base plastic disc. It was bad. It was bad. But the second one had a lot of color. But my issue was I couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to do. And I think that was kind of the same with the shaving cream. Either you put the powder on, and it's really tough to manipulate the powder once it's there, or you're one of those assholes that use RIT and you droppered it on, and then it's just as tough to move it.
Yeah.
The lotion just didn't do it for me. And I didn't know what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't until I started using the glue that I realized that that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. No, I feel like once I did the clear glue, it's like, okay, I've leveled up now. Awesome. Mm-hmm. But I don't do lotion beds, but I do lotion painting.
Like lotion topping, yeah, I will do that. I will say that I had not used detergent until I saw the episode that you did with Kateri. And I was like, holy shit, like I could do this faster. Like kind of your sentiment towards glue beds. Mm-hmm. But I'm that way with lotion topping. I'm like, I really don't want to let this sit for 24 hours. Like I want to put it on there and I want it to be on there.
Yes. I've tried detergent. I mean, for the detergent and lotion painting, in my mind, it's the same thing. You can get the saturation with lotion painting just as fast or really fast as well. Just got to use heat.
See, I've used heat before, and I guess it's just the process. I haven't perfected the process of it because it dries out on me. The lotion dries out.
Yeah.
I don't really have what is that? The little greenhouse setup that some people have, where they can keep the moisture trapped in.
Yes.
For me, it's very much like my other dyes. Set it and forget it. I'll put it in a pie tin, put the lotion where it needs to go, and cover it with some tin foil, and just leave it until tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, do you have any tips or tricks for disc dyeing for either beginners or seasoned veterans out there?
So for the beginners, don't be afraid to try something. Don't be afraid to mess up. Because there's a lot of great work out there. So people can feel maybe a little intimidated trying to start. When we started, there wasn't as many crazy pieces as there are now, but there also wasn't as much information. So it was a give and a take. Now there's a whole lot more tutorials, but there's also a whole lot more people making great dyes. So there's a little bit added pressure. I would say for the seasoned guys, don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. Because there's some people that are known for, I do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. Having a signature style is great. Sometimes I wish I had one. But knowing that you can do something else is kind of enlightening. Trying another thing, and it might not work out at first, but just being able to branch out, I think is important.
Totally agree. And when you mentioned the beginner disc dyer, I don't know if I can imagine starting disc dyeing like right now. Because like you said, you're seeing all these amazing dyes, then you do yours and you're like, why doesn't it look like that? Well, those dyers had time to develop their skills, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the social media with all these influencers and their fake lies of everything so perfect. But yeah, definitely for anybody that's beginning, don't get frustrated for what you're seeing, because a lot of time and effort was put into where that person got.
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's people that they'll put out their first dye and it doesn't look exactly like the tutorial, but if you compare it to my first dye, it's still leagues beyond what my first one looked like.
Yeah.
And one more thing to add in for kind of the beginners is please look up a color wheel. Understanding some basic color theory gets you so far.
Yeah. If not, well, I hope you like the color brown.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I hope you learned some dyeing secrets, tips, and tricks from Brandon, because I know I have. But now we're going to get to know him more on a personal level. So, the next section that I have is your favorite fave. What is your favorite band or song?
Okay. So, I may be a little weird in that growing up, I didn't listen to a whole lot of music. It didn't really have an influence on my life until I was probably 10 years old. And I had gotten a stereo for my birthday. And there was a song on the first cassette that I popped in there. And it's Kryptonite by Three Doors Down. And to this day, I don't listen to it much now, but I can tell you it's my favorite song because it got me into music. I don't know how long it would be otherwise that I would have been to get to that point.
That is awesome. Do you have a current favorite band nowadays or genre?
I listen to a good bit of stuff. The way I like to describe it is I listen to anything where I can understand the words.
So like no growly death metal or...
No growly death metal, no mumbly gangster rap. No K-pop.
Right on.
Listen to a lot of people rag on country, but I do listen to country music. I am in Georgia, so I'm kind of forced to a certain extent. I did listen to it before I came down here.
Yeah.
But a good amount of country, a good amount of rock.
Right on. Makes sense. I mean, there is some good country music, I guess, but yeah.
Not so much now.
No. Old stuff. That's good stuff.
And Chris Stapleton.
Right. What is your favorite food?
So I cannot bring myself to say pizza.
But it's pizza.
Almost.
Okay.
So I grew up in New Jersey. Kind of land of the pizza.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I have to say the Italian genre, Italian American food specifically, because I've been to Italy and the Italian food tastes way different over in Italy.
Okay.
But Italian American food is my jam. I love a good plate of spaghetti. Pizza, obviously great. And there's nothing that beats walking into a hole-in-the-wall deli in New York. And getting the sandwich you didn't know you needed.
Nice. Yeah, I visited New York once, and I went to the sandwich shop that was a hole-in-the-wall. It was one of the best sandwiches that I had.
Exactly.
What is your favorite beverage?
So unfortunately, I am a big soda guy. Huge fan of Pepsi. Sorry to all you Coke drinkers, but you're probably also mouth breathers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not brand loyal to either Pepsi or Coke, but okay. So I said, what do you call that drink in your land?
What do you mean, like the fizzy carbonated sugary substance we're talking about?
Yes.
Soda.
Okay, soda. Right. Do they say that in Georgia, or is that from your native land?
In New Jersey, it's soda.
Okay.
Down in Georgia, they call everything Coke.
Yeah.
Everything's Coke.
Can I have a Coke Pepsi? Like what?
They'll just. I've gotten to the point where I ask for Coke because nobody has Pepsi down here.
Huh. Fascinating.
And they'll be like, "Is Pepsi okay?" And I was like, "You're my favorite person today."
I'm also fascinated that your native land says soda, because I know the part of Wisconsin where I'm from, we say soda, but like an hour or two out, everybody says pop. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard pop a few times. Some of the old timers have called it cola.
Mm. Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting seeing the vernacular of a word in a different area of the country.
Okay, so I'm also curious on vernaculars. Do you say bubbler or water fountain?
Water fountain. Water fountain, pretty easy. Through work, I've started calling it a water cooler because that's what some of the engineers call it. I think water cooler. I think when you have to press the tab, to get the water out of the 10-gallon container.
Yeah,
it's definitely water fountain or a drinking fountain for me.
And when I think of water fountain, I think of like an art sculpture with a
in a
water
park
coming out. Yeah, it's not something you drink out of. It's something you look at.
Well, if you say you guys use bubbler.
Yes.
I hear bubbler and I think the little like the filter on a fish tank. Bubbles.
Fair. All right. Moving on. So besides disc golf and disc dyeing, what other hobbies do you have?
So between disc golf and work, it takes up a lot of my time. I'm also an avid martial artist. I've been doing that since I was 4 years old. Yep. The first profession that I ever wanted was to be a Power Ranger. Take that for what you will.
I wanted to be a Power Ranger too, so there's that. But you took it to the next level and actually became a martial artist.
Yeah, got close, started training at 4, got my black belt at 10.
Wow.
And then was basically teaching from 10 until now for the most part. So it's become a lifestyle more than a hobby.
That's awesome.
So I wouldn't be where I was without it.
What does the martial arts mean to you?
Like I said, it's a lifestyle. It started off with kind of self-confidence. I was a super shy kid. I would walk into a room and I'd always be looking at the ground. Didn't like making eye contact with anybody. So it just helped me understand, accepting yourself, and understanding that it's okay to be good at some things. It's okay to not be good at other things. But that's kind of what makes you human. And then the discipline that kind of brought it it gave me a sense of consistency and kind of rigidity as I grew up. It was a nice thing to fall back on.
That's awesome that it had that such a good positive outlook, positive outcome on your life.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, if anybody tries to steal one of your discs while you're vending, you can kick their ass, or if someone pisses you off, or if they're being a dick, you can kick their ass.
Or if I ever get to play pro and a certain somebody has an issue with the time violation.
Do you have any other hobbies?
Hanging out with my dogs.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a big one.
What kind of dogs do you have?
I've got 2 Siberian Huskies and a Black Lab.
All right. Well, they must keep you very active.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they're very fluffy, but they have a lot of energy.
Yeah, tons of exercise. And I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Do I want to get up and walk them every day for limitless amounts of distance? No. But am I also getting the exercise? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's great that you're actually exercising your dogs, because I know a lot of people are like, I'm just going to sleep in.
Yeah. Side note, though, Huskies are not great disc golf dogs
Why do you say that?
because they like to run after anything and everything. It could be a disc. It could be a squirrel. It could be a leaf that blew in a direction that they weren't expecting.
Do they chew your discs at all?
One of them does. One of them has gotten quite a few putters of mine.
Well, luckily they're cute and adorable and unconditional.
Yeah, they make up for it.
Yes. What do you do for a living? I know you kind of mentioned it, but what specifically do you do?
I'm an architect.
What got you into doing that?
So my dad is a residential contractor.
Okay.
So growing up, I would come by. My mom might have brought us by a job site, to meet him at lunch, or we'd swing by after work because he forgot something there, or he needed to check with a guy. I remember at a very young age running through, the kind of bare bones of a house. The studs are up, there's no drywall. So it kind of imprinted on me young. And I was like, I want to work with my dad when I grow up. Well, I grew up a little bit and got to do some construction over the summers and said, fuck that shit. Yeah, summertime, the 10, 12-hour days every day. I'm very prone to sunburn. Not great. Wouldn't recommend. So I kind of tried to think what was the way to stay in the field and not have to be in the field. And so architecture seemed like the way to go. I get to design the building and then say, here, you put it together.
Yeah, I give mad props to the skilled trades, because I've done that for a little bit, and it is good physical exercise and labor and decent pay, but I'd much rather be behind a desk.
True. Yeah. I will say, if anybody ever wants to shit on, skilled trades, I will pay you, to lay some brick.
Yes. Oh man. And there's not enough skilled labor out there right now. That's for sure. And yeah, it does definitely take a toll on your body though if you do it for a career.
Oh yeah. I attribute that to why I wake up after a round of disc golf and don't want to get out of bed. It's the construction. It wasn't me getting old.
Yes. So the next section is, if you had to pick 3 discs to play any course for the rest of your life, what would those 3 discs be?
Man, I gotta say, out of all the questions that you've asked on all the episodes that I've seen of the podcast since its inception, this one has scared me the most.
Dun, dun, dun.
So if it's for the rest of my life and I don't know what the courses are I'm going to play. See, my big thing is I love to just rip on a drive. So the smart player in me would say you don't need a distance driver. But that kid in me that picked up that Wraith says we need a distance driver.
Yeah.
So I would think I would have to take the Royal Grace. Yeah, that one's been a pretty big staple in the bag. Although this new S-Line DD3 has been pretty sweet. So ask me again in 2 weeks and I might change my mind.
Well, this is your permanent record. Whatever you say here now, it sticks forever.
All right. So we're going to go with the Grace.
All right.
Because that's a pretty great driver for backhand and for forehand. I don't have a super strong forehand. Yeah, from some elbow injuries from some other sports. So the forehand comes out when it has to. I think I would also go with an The S-Line MD1. That one's been pretty clutch. And I'm assuming when they start making them, they'll be a whole lot easier to find now that Simon's not with Discmania anymore. And then I think I would have to go with my 300 A2. Because I could putt with it if I need to. Because I think, if I only get 3 discs, bringing a dedicated putting putter seems like a waste to me. But I love having a disc I can rip hard and flat and know it's not going to turn over on me. And I think 3 of my 5 aces have been with A2s.
Oh, wow. So, pardon my ignorance. What brand is an A2?
Can I say it out loud?
You can say whatever you want.
Prodigy.
Okay, that's probably why I haven't heard of that, because it's an inferior brand.
It's the only one I'll throw. The only Prodigy disc I throw. And the only reason I throw it, not to directly shit on Prodigy, but, I would throw a Zone, or I would throw a Toro, I guess is Innova's new comparison. But the A2 is more stable, and it's more shallow, which is what I like. If I could find something that did exactly what it did with the shape that it had, I wouldn't throw an A2.
Interesting. Yeah. What are the numbers on the A2?
I think it's marked as like a 4204, maybe. Maybe 4203, 4303. It's right in that overstable approach disc, because people don't want to call it a putter.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, the numbers are made up anyway, so what does it matter?
True.
All right. Well, you can only use those discs from now on. Goodbye, bag. Next section, the perfect hole. What has been your favorite course/hole that you've played so far?
So I haven't played a ton of different courses, but there's a course in general up near me. It's about an hour from me. It's called The Tracks. It's a new, Innova just put it in like 2 years ago. So it's a new course. It's been maintained. It's got it's a tight wooded course, but it's pretty immaculate in the way it's been maintained. It makes you play smart, but you'll have a 500-foot par 4 in the woods, but actually have a fairway to throw on. So that's kind of nice. But I also haven't played any of the big notable courses.
Do you have any
Hornet's Nest? Hornet's Nest is cool, but it's not my favorite.
Do you have any courses that are on your bucket list that you want to play?
There's definitely some on my bucket list. I think it would be cool to go and play Eagles Crossing. Just because it's so unique. About what it is and what it was made for. It was designed to be a disc golf course. It wasn't a park that was there that had a disc golf course retrofitted. But I'm gonna have to go with everybody else and say I need to play Maple Hill.
Yeah. Now I need to play Maple Hill. Damn it. Someday. Plus Simon lives over there, doesn't he?
For now.
Yes.
I'm sure he's gonna stay there a little longer now.
Yeah. It's not a bad course to have in your backyard per se.
No, yeah. there could definitely be worse courses.
Yes. And speaking of pro players, if you had to pick one pro player to play around with and hang out with, who would it be and why?
So again, I feel like I'm giving the popular answer, but it would have to be Simon.
Okay, cool. Great. I love you.
So, I've talked to Simon a couple times. I've done some dice. I did the Elsa and Anna the Frozen theme disc that he had on his Instagram a couple weeks ago. I did that for him. So I know him. I've talked to him a little bit through the elbow injury that he had, because I had something similar, and tried to see if there was some breakthrough that I didn't know about as far as some rehab for it, because obviously he's on another level with, it made him his money for the most part. But I mean, he also loves to shoot pool. That's something I've done. I'm sure I can get my ass kicked at darts a couple times before I get frustrated. Yeah, he just seems like a cool dude to hang out with.
Awesome. Yeah, no. It's a great choice now that he's with MVP. So, like your answer.
Yeah,
Not
fans win
biased or
with Flair.
anything. All right. Well, now we got to know Brandon a little bit better. Again, learn some more stuff about him. But he will also be raffling off a disc. So you can get one of his awesome dye discs for as little as $1. So 100% of the proceeds will go to him. So if you want to help support him in his dyeing habit and adventure and just, making sure he continues dyeing, give him some money. So, yeah. Head to dyersguild.co/raffled to find this raffle. The raffle will go live when this podcast goes live, and it'll be live for 2 weeks. So, as little as one little measly dollar, you can get this awesomely dyed disc. But more importantly, helping support a fellow dyers. So, again, head to dyersguild.co/raffle to get entered today. Again, Brandon, thank you for being on this little podcast of ours here. I enjoyed it, learned a lot, and yes, thanks for being on.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. Thanks for having me. It's interesting to be on this side of the microphone.
Yes.
So I'm happy to join the club.
I like being behind the camera and not front of it, so I feel you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Until next time, we will talk to you later. Bye.
See you guys.